Hello. Oops. Goodbye. Let's get to the top of this slideshow. Okay. You saw my sneak preview. Okay. Hello again. Yes. So, I've been culling through my outlines, and I am on essentially my last three. And this is basically everything that has fallen through the colander, or the sieve. And things that I did want to mention, they are across the board, but as you might expect if you've been watching my stuff, it's mostly about science again, and you would think that I've said everything that can be said about science, but no. Yeah, this is a old memory of a concept that I have recently enlarged because of a program on psychology that delved in the term much deeper than I first understood it to be. And my understanding came from in the 70s. I used to read Scientific American. It was very difficult, but I really was trying to increase my knowledge of science. And there was an article, I forget what the topic was, but it did delve into cognitive dissonance. And the example it used is if a, let's say a young man has two women that he's suiting, and he's in a quandary about which one to marry. And he finally makes up his mind. Once his mind is made up, probably more subconsciously, everything that he then views is in relation to that decision. So he wants to see information that confirms that he took the right path. So this, and it might be, you know, at the expense of selective perception. So, you know, he might be self-deluding himself of that reality. But and that was my understanding of it. But my larger understanding now is when the self has a conflict between what it views itself as being, and here let's expand the Freudian concept of the ego, which is the self. And if you see, you know, the cartoons with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, well, the angel is your superego. It's what you aspire to be. And your devil is your libido, your lower level urges and selfish desires. So, anyway, if you have, let's say, a high regard for yourself, but you find yourself doing devious things, it's you need to somehow justify this. And I think the best example that I can think of now with that understanding is if you watch the series that really caught on NBC about catching a predator, and all those cyber sexual predators, and God, they were just lining up the doors. Not only was it amazing how many there were, but how much in denial, especially when they went into the interview afterwards with the police, how much in denial they were of their reality. So this is the extended view of cognitive dissonance that really, what I say, you know, it invades all of us to one degree or another, consciously or unconsciously, and unconsciously. And I always like this saying. I could actually make a talk, and there was a talk one time that listed maybe about 10, you know, famous sayings another one I remember, I believe it was from Bill Gates. Who would ever need over 600K? Yeah. Well, he only missed the letter there. I think it's up to T now. What knows what comes next? I was amazed that memory is up to gigabytes now, too. God, memory was so precious. So, yeah, I mean, just think of the concept of the human mind and what, you know, it had failed to conceive of at that point in the patent office when everything was physical. If you hear that bell, that's my cat. I forgot to take the bell off. Come here. Come here. Okay, so anyway, there are many, and we ourselves say such things, especially when you look back. In fact, I had a bet with my father. I can't find this note anymore. He made me make a bet that I would be 35 before I got married, and I beat him. Yeah, he just thought everybody, you know, was like him, and I thought everybody was like me. I think my cat's gonna join us pretty soon, so let's continue here. Yeah, and this is, if you've watched any of my videos, you've certainly heard me express my theme of a brain and a vat that can be taken at so many levels, both figuratively and, what's the other word? I don't know. Oh, I gotta get that bell off. That is bugging. Oh, okay, she's getting very interested now, but see, if I call her she. Cats inherently are feminine to me, but I've had, God, I was going to give an old cat. I shouldn't give it names. Well, here we go. Yeah, come here, you. So, anyway, the concept of a brain in a vat is that, you know, we can be manipulated. I got the bell here. Just a minute. There. Okay, no more. Yeah, but this isn't on a physical level. This is more of a mental level, and I was that brain, and I was in that vat in the 1950s, about 54, so I would have been, you know, 10 years old, and I can remember Saturday matinees so much when you had double features and cartoons, and then you got some popcorn or candy, 35 cents. What a deal. And I just remember so clearly, so many times our little gang would play war games. This applies to Indians as well, too, but here I'm just taking war games. Indians would be the cavalry. No, that's the Lone Ranger. Anyway, they would be coming in. So, but anyway, with the, when we playing war games, if I had to work myself up, all I had to do is sing one of these songs. So these are the three, if you didn't know, these are the three mottos of the three services. Up we go into the wild blue yonder. And that would be, of course, if I was a sky pilot or something cool like that. And then if we were out at sea, it would be, anchors away, my boy. Anchors away. I can just steal all that stock footage. Oh, I remember all those Victory at Sea. That was a different kind of music, though. And then good old Marines from the hulls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We will fight for right and freedom. We will keep our country clean. Don't get me going there. Okay, now back to science. This was a concept, and this was before I really was getting heavily into science. And when I say science, I mean relativity and quantum physics, not more classical, which I was familiar with. But I really enjoyed Greek thinking, and one of the philosophers, Democritus, Not that I know that much about him, but I know that he led the atomists' school of thinking, and that thinking is if and assume for a moment that he was right, that in fact all there are atoms and the void. And when he said the void, he's basically saying, it's not an atom here, it's just a space. So he really means, and he doesn't necessarily mean a vacuum. Well, I don't think they had a concept of a vacuum at that time, and air. Yeah, and what matter was and what it wasn't. But anyway, yeah, and he was in this quandary. What would that? Yeah, a word would be. I want to say paranoid, paradox. That if all there in fact is are atoms and the void, what is this thing called qualia? I mean, why does this taste so sweet? I mean, why do certain lyrics sound pure and others sound adulterated? So, yeah, I mean, that was a paradox. But yeah, he was certainly limited on the human base of knowledge. And, of course, at this time, what he is missing, of course, is all the other attributes. Time, which is a big enigma. Energy, which becomes more paradoxical the more you look into it. Entropy, which is tremendously fascinating. And information theory. And emergence of traits that do not exist at simpler structures. And the possibility of more dimensions, but that's not necessarily Democritus, but I think I've spent enough time on atomists thinking about atoms and the void. And another Greek thinker, and I like them all. Aristotle. And I won't blame my negative thinking on Aristotle. I'll blame it on the church embracing his thought about the perfect circles and the music of the spheres. And, his concept started, of course, that anything that moves takes something to move it. It takes a mover. And so everything that moves has a mover, and on, all the way up into space and the movement of stars in the heavens. So his thinking was, and he was, I think, a Platonist too, in that, things on earth aren't perfect, but up in the heavens. And he certainly was here, that the heavens are perfect, and the perfection meant everything was a perfect circle. All of the heavenly bodies were perfect circles, and they orbited. Of course, they all orbited around the Earth in perfect circles. But they didn't do it at all different elevations. They did it on different planes, and these stars are attached to this sphere, this like glass sphere. So you can't see the sphere; you can only see the stars that are embedded in them. And there's one it's like an onion skin. There's one close to Earth that's moving, and then one outside of that's moving, and they all have stars. So that's why you see stars, moving around in weird ways. So, but as these spheres moved against each other, they made this sound, and it was this clear celestial music of the spheres, as it was coined. But to finish his story, and this is why the Catholic Church embraced this thought, is that there must be an outermost sphere. And so what moves that sphere? You need a prime mover. And of course, here comes the cavalry. God comes into the rescue, of course. Yeah, so, yeah, the church embracing this thought made this, standard dogma. And as one of my physics professor said, and it took science 1,500 years to get the church to change its mind. So, and what I want to mention about that, and that's not the end of the story, but to continue the story up into more modern times, this concept about epicycles. Now, there was this guy called Ptolemy. Now, there were Ptolemy, like Cleopatra was a Ptolemy, but that's like a pharaoh. But this is Ptolemy person. Anyway, at this time, and this would be, I think, right about the time of Alexander. In fact, I think Ptolemy might have been one of Alexander's generals. There was a great deal of knowledge there collected in Alexandria at the lighthouse and the library that unfortunately burnt down, and we, shoot ourselves in the foot again. But anyway, we were starting to make celestial observations now that weren't consistent with perfect circular paths. So we're getting more and more scientific information that is opposing this, Aristotelian concept of perfect perfection and the universe. So this is really interesting, yeah, because you can interpret things this way. I mean, yeah, it's like string theory. Yeah, you can interpret, everything's a little string. You can do, you can sort of do what you want. It's what's important is, does it make predictions as consistent with all their findings. So, anyway, cutting to the chase here, we're getting these elliptical orbits, and they're not perfect circles. So, Ptolemy comes up with this concept of epicycles, or epicircles. And what this is imagine, a body, a star going around in a perfect circle. So of course, it's circling Earth. But as it circles, it's also taking another circular path. So it's a circle, and then going in a little circle. So it would be similar to if you looked at the moon's path in relation to the Earth's orbit. So it sort of goes like this. And there's no end to, the number of circles and circles that you can have and how big their diameters are and how fast they spin. So if you just think about that for a while, you could take any elliptical orbit and match it to any number of epicircles. So this is the way, we were able to justify, what we're... Oh, yeah, well, there's circles and circles and circles, yeah. And then... but when that finally had to come crashing down was Kepler. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but he's the one that really came up with the concept of an ellipse or an oval, and and it's very interesting. And there was a movie about this too, about the concept of an oval is really has not one focus, because they look at a circle as an ellipse where its two foci are together at the same point, and that's what a circle is. But whenever the two foci start to separate from each other, and what you do is you tie a string in a loop with a pencil, put it in there, and you can make the oval that way. So, oh, how did I get it here? I must have pushed the button. So, anyway, but before I leave Kepler, what I wanted to say there is what I thought was very good was equal areas and equal times. And that is, if you take the orbit of a planet, one of our planets around there, that's somewhat elliptical. Or better yet, maybe a comet, because when it comes in close and whips around the sun, it goes very fast around the sun, but when it gets way out there, it's very slow. So what he's saying is the distance that it travels in, let's say, 1 month, if you map the area to its center, it would be equal any other time. When it's moving fast, because it's closer, it's a smaller area. When it's far away, it's so I found that very interesting. I hope I explained that good enough. It's hard to do without graphics. But yeah, the next little story, and this is just one of many that I wanted to relate about, being a optimist, and I even had a talk about optimism being in the human genome. But this is Santos Dumont. There was a third name in there. I forget what the third name was, but very interesting history. I'll give you a quick synopsis of it. I believe it was American History or one such program that told me about his life. He was basically an aristocrat from Brazil, and somehow got to move to Paris, France at an early age, and was contemporary to the Wright brothers, but maybe a little earlier. So this would be the late 1800s. And he was heavily involved, I believe, in hot air balloons, but he quickly went to what was called dirigibles. And dirigibles simply means they're steerable. You can make them go where you want them to go. And and these were converted from hot air to gas. And in fact, he got in a crash on a race around Paris of dirigibles, but he recovered, and he then got involved, as the Wright brothers, in flying, heavier than air flying. And the reason I'm telling you this story is he was this optimist, and he saw the miseries that war caused, and so I think of Nobel too, at the same guy invented dynamite. But Dumont felt that the airplane would make war so horrible, as we did about nuclear weapons, that it would discourage any war, because nobody would want to suffer such devastation. So he, all of his discoveries, he gave away for free without any patent rights. And he was very innovative, and he did a lot of stuff like the Wright brothers, contemporary with the Wright brothers. But long story short, I believe he lived into the First World War, and he saw how aviation and his patents were being used for the total destruction of man at a much higher level. So he regretted his optimism in his later life. He had moved back to Brazil, and in fact there was some airplane that flew over and, I don't know, bombed something in front of him. Anyway, he just took his own life. I mean, he crashed into reality. I mean, look at our past. You can see our future. Now, back to science. Just a little here, a little there. A little politics, a little spice it up. And this is a fairly recent, I wouldn't say discovery, but I would say a opinion of mine, because that's been one of my biggest conundrums about, realizing that there is a timeless reality. The relativity of simultaneity proves that. I don't want to go into that, but basically it's undisputable that time is very much local, that the universe doesn't click to absolute time and absolute space, as our good friend, what's his name, Newton, thought. So just trying to conceive of, standing outside of space-time and looking at all of space-time as a loaf of bread, all past, present, and future. hard to think of doing that without doing that in some kind of a time. Can't conceive of anything happening outside of time. So it doesn't seem like there can be any consciousness in a timeless reality, but it does exist. But I don't want to get it. I was going to get into another topic, but I believe there's a future slide for that. I'm not going to spend any time here. Wave-particle duality. I'm sure you've heard it all before. You can hear it better elsewhere than from me, but it brings, the objectivity of science sort of starts to fall apart when you start to get to this level, because you have to take into account observation. Entanglement. That's another story I don't want to get into, but that's a baffler. But I might mention that even though these communications seem to take place instantaneously across vast distances in space, there's no real communication. You can't pass information, and that's the key to relativity, is that you can actually make photons go faster than their natural speed of light, but you can't carry information on those photons. And a quantum leap, I've mentioned this before, so I'm just going to mention it in passing. This is an instant where a particle seems to instantaneously disappear from one area in space and reappear in another area in space without taking any of the intervening space in between. It's quite baffling and troubling. And here I wanted to spend a little time, because I haven't talked about this before, so I'm going to slow down a bit. And it's difficult without graphics, so others can do it much better with graphics, but just conceive of a three-dimensional graph, as you've no doubt seen before. And the vertical axis you make time, but the other two axes you leave space, so you're really representing two-dimensional space over time. And that's essentially what a space-time diagram is. It's also called a Feynman diagram, after my hero Richard Feynman. And now I just want to talk about a whirl line, and this is based upon this space-time diagram, and that is if you just followed a particle or a group of particles over time through space. This would be a mapping of where they go. So a particle would essentially then just be a line through that would be going up because time goes forward up. And its different position on the two-dimensional plane would be shown over time. So that's all. And before I leave whirl line, though, you could have a group of particles. So particles could come together and then go apart on their whirl lines. But what I wanted to say about the concept of the self, the human, thinking yourself as something other than a number of particles. Of course, you must have heard that all of your particles that you have in you now were not with you when you were born, and will probably not be with you when you die. And so if you looked at your particles over time on a space-time diagram, you are just a location where particles come together, spend some time together, and go apart. Now, to say it's just, that's all it is, isn't really accurate, but you could say, you could view it that way. So that's what a whirl line is. And now the most interesting in a space-time diagram would be the concept of a light cone. I hope you've at least heard that term somewhere before. It's sort of intriguing, and you wonder what it is. Well, it has to do with the speed of light. And so take the space-time diagram, but now we're going to have to take into the concept of now. And so if there's an instant of now, meaning, let's say, you right there, right now, where you are, bingo, plot that on space-time diagram, well, you're going to have, and realize that this is three-dimensional too, so visualize a an hourglass, a sand hourglass that comes up, a cone comes up together to a point and then goes apart to a cone above. So what that light cone is the speed of light. That is, if you go 1 second from now, it would be, 186,000 mile perimeter radius, of a circle. And then a second later, so that would be the cone, would be the expand. So this is the, think of it as information that can either get to you or leave you. And on the other side of the cone, it's like too far away. It's like if the sun exploded right at this very moment, it would take us 8 minutes to figure it out. So it would be outside of our light cone. So just realize that, and each person is their own light cone, each observer. So that would be in an empty space. But now taking in this concept of a black hole where, and we don't want to get into black holes right here, but just that they have intense gravity, so they warp the space around them. So essentially what would happen is your light cone would start to stretch and be bent over towards the black hole because you were coming close enough to it that space was being warped, and so your light cone is being shifted. And if your trajectory were such that you would actually enter into the black hole, your light cones would go, be going in there. You would, there is going to be no way out. So that's a good way to think of things and the way information can flow through vast distances in space. And I've mentioned this before, so I won't spend much time on it. That's the unity between the infinite, infinitely large or infinitely small, and the void, or zero. And that doesn't seem obvious, but in mathematics it happens very often. And I would say the clearest example to think of, again, would be a black hole. Because this, again, is where science finally breaks down our theories of relativity, and quantum physics go in a graveyard spin, spewing out all these infinities, so nothing works. And so what you have is, essentially vast spaces in finite space. So you have both extremes together, and that's where the two meet. And another concept, you may have heard it elsewhere, but it is true, and it seems to be the driving force in the universe, if not the force that is forcing our universe to expand at an increasing rate into a cold, dead heat death. I guess that's an oxymoron. A 0 point energy, or a 0 point or vacuum energy, is this known fact that a vacuum is not the same as nothing, because there is space, although there's nothing in it. And although it's hard for us to make a perfect vacuum, I understand on average there's about 1 hydrogen atom in 1 cubic meter of space. But getting back to the point, even if we had a perfect vacuum, there is endlessly particles and antiparticles spontaneously coming out of nowhere, coming apart, just forever, for like a Planck, whatever they call Planck unit of time, and smash back together. So they release energy and return energy in such a short period of time that this doesn't, I guess, break any laws. And this causes this force, this pressure. And this has been proved. So, and this is what evaporates black holes. So this is very important. Although I think you'll be able to live without knowing much more about it. It's there. And I would just want to have you think for a moment, if you like going to these places, to ponder the difference between a vacuum, which is what I just mentioned, space without matter, but energy keeps on creeping in there, and the void. Now, the void is a term I would say you would have to say what it means in context, because sometimes it can mean a vacuum, and sometimes it can mean nothingness. So that then would say, okay, well, we know what a vacuum is, and what is nothingness. And nothingness is that older sister that you don't have, or that younger brother, or that second niece. I mean, it's something, it's the concept of a multiverse and many worlds, and, in another universe, you might have 3 sons and 1 daughter, but in this universe, you don't. So that is something that is just totally negated, has no reality in space-time, and maybe in thinking too, so that's... And nothingness, let's see if that's my next slide here. And nothingness, there's a perfection to nothingness. Buddhists, I won't say dwell, but they meditate on nothingness, because that's the that's what fundamental concept is, no self. That you deny that you have an independent reality to the universe, that you are just part of the karma, the cause and effect. And even the concept of free will is under suspect here with science. So anyway, you have to give that up. And there is a perfection of nothingness. And in other words, nothing can be more perfect, because nothing is there to be. You don't have anything to tear down, anything to be wrong. So it's completely a mental kind of state of bliss. But with physical matter now, when you're ever talking about, space-time, when you get into that loaf of bread, symmetries, and this is rather strange, symmetries start to emerge at high temperatures. Everything attains the same color. But symmetries start to break down at lower temperatures. Well, of course, that would be saying the same thing, just from a different point of view. But what I wanted to say is that symmetries start to reemerge near absolute zero. And this is the effect of superconductivity and all those weird quantum phenomena that occur near the extremes. And this is another quandary or conundrum here. Is there really objective reality? I might mention this Berkeley guy, I think it was in the 1600s, that his idea was, well, to describe any reality, you have to talk about its attributes. And to talk about attributes, you have to have, observed it. So to observe it means there has to be a conscious observation. So nothing exists without observation, the classic Copenhagen interpretation. But he did have a cop-out. He says, well, God is there to watch over everything. So it does exist anyway. But energy. Anyway. Back to here, and what I wanted to bring out here is my new thinking is that yes, there is, and I'm going to expand why here briefly, and that is the relationship between entropy and time. I find that entropy endlessly fascinating. But what makes entropy even more fascinating is its, or I would say, energy. As energy has this relationship to time, and the concept of information, and this concept of information too, you start to have to think of information separate from in the human mind, and start to think about what. Same thing with entropy. It's hard to think about what's order and what's disorder. Same thing with it's hard to think about what's information, what isn't. But you'll get beyond that. But the concept of decoherence, and I had heard this before, but now I think I'm in this camp that, yeah, the break of the wave function, the collapse of the wave function into a particle's position doesn't require a observation. It can be done just through the environment, and this and think of this decoherence as basically a leakage of information. Because if we go back to that phenomenon I mentioned about entanglement doesn't work if those particles interact with any other thing. So they almost have to be in a perfect vacuum to stay entangled. So you get your feet wet, on anywhere else, you're not entangled anymore. And how black holes become so important about the processing of information, and how it's handled over time in this big fight between Stephen Hawking and Leonard Susskind on the black hole wars, and Stephen finally yielded, and yeah, this concept of information, yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's just phenomenal. So, oh, I know I'm going to put this book, this book here, D something, The Universe, by Charles Seif, yes, so I'll put the title right under there. If there was one book I would recommend, it would be that one. I'm giving this recommendation a second time, though. And it also gives a light explanation of relativity and quantum physics. So you get the big three there. Relativity, quantum physics, and information. Oh, and some entropy and energy to boot. And and taking this a step further, I mean, if you think about where do you draw the line on consciousness, actually, consciousness could go down to like the plant level, because I mean they follow the sign. I mean they're aware of their environment. A proton is aware of a neutron, is aware of electron. So this idea of pantheism, that essentially there's a endless cascade of consciousness, and it simply starts to go in quantum jumps there up at higher levels. And finish off this slide here with the single neuron theory of consciousness. I think Daniel Dennett's multiple drafts theory was the most interesting. Before that, which is essentially, we're just a warehouse full of thoughts, very Buddhist kind of thinking. But the single neuron theory goes with this thought of pantheism, and that every single neuron that you have is conscious. But to get that amplified to a level that, creates some true consciousness, that has to be done in parallel. So that's the thinking, is that every single neuron has equal consciousness. They just have to be combined to make it emerge as a consciousness. Okay, so I guess we're at the end. Yes, conclusion. Okay. The unity of the universe is obvious. I think I've said that so many times. I'll just continue on. Human destiny is as human nature does. So that's the good old Gump. You never know what you're going to... Oh, no. Stupid is as stupid does. Yeah, so we... by and large, we plot our own destiny, as long as there's not a big nemesis, asteroid there to knock us out. But we're doing a pretty good job of knocking ourselves out. So just think about that. I mean, we don't have to. We got another 500 million years here that humans could enjoy. Yeah, we're just over enjoying it now. Kill it for our kids. Yeah, make it to start again, re-evolve. So, do good things for the earth today, so humans can balance on the tightrope of time and not fall off so quickly after just a few million years. And if you draw the line, of maybe written civilization, just 100,000, a couple 100,000, and whoop-de-doo, we're off. Oh, without falling off. Okay, so right, walking the tightrope without falling off, and taking the earth with it. That's the worst part. Yeah, okay, I like to take that persona of Klaatu. Okay, I'd come here and zap. Well, what I would do, I would have taken all those, I said this before, I would have taken all those specimens, out to space there to preserve them, and then just let the humans go kill themselves on their own. It's not as dramatic. It wouldn't be a big play in Hollywood. And then come back and then just repopulate the Earth. And I might put a plug in for my bliss here. Go to my website and put a little marker there. Yeah, so this is the way I see things happening. But it need to be as human destiny is, as human nature does.